Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. If you are returning, I appreciate you all so much. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing so and make sure you give me a big thumbs up. It really does help to support my channel. Let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. Do you remember when I made this heart? Well, I made two more, and we are going to be using these to create something else. I thought I was going to use the styrofoam eggs and this floral moss. I ended up using other things, so I'm going to show you in just a second because I saw this sitting on the side. I had gotten it out thinking I was going to use it for a different project that you'll see a little bit later, and then I thought, you know what, this might work even better than those little eggs. So I started clipping the little skewers off of here, and I started inserting them into the tops and bottoms of my hearts. So just making sure that that hole is nice and secure and tucking my heart, my little baby heart, on top of the other. And then I'm taking the piece that I cut off and inserting that into the top, cutting it at an angle to make it sharp. And then I'm going to add my second heart on here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with another little baby heart. And then finally our third decoupaged heart. If you did not see that video, I will make sure I link it in the description box so you can go and see exactly how I created these hearts with Dollar Tree items. So I've got this all put together, but it was a little bit flimsy, and my initial thought was to use one of these big skewers from the Dollar Tree. I've had this in my stash for a while. So I went ahead and I decided, you know, I'm going to see if I can get it to work with these little baby hearts. I was a little scared it was going to completely mangle the heart. I had extras, so I wasn't worried if I needed to start over with it, but it actually worked perfectly. So I went ahead and tried getting my skewer all the way through the center of two of the hearts, and then I only had to go halfway in through the bottom of the third heart that was going to be on the top. So I just went in from both sides and just made sure that I was coming out at the places that I wanted the skewer to be going. It was not as difficult as I thought it might be. So did the same thing with that middle heart, and then that third heart that's still there on my table to the right, I only had to go in part way. Once I had all of my holes kind of drilled, for lack of a better term, I went ahead and I stacked everything up on my skewer, got everything in where I needed it to go, and then I just slid those back up once I had it as far as it was going to go with that. Now I am grabbing a Dollar Tree flower pot that I had in my stash, and I am going to get this all fancied up a little bit. I'm taking it was a ghost at one point from my very first year doing my channel, and I had taken it apart, and I'm just using this fabric to kind of, it's not really lining it, right, because this is on the outside, but I'm wrapping the pot with the fabric to fancy it up a little bit. So I'm just using a little bit of hot glue on the inside, and it's, because that's plastic, I should be able to pull this off later if I decide that I want to use the pot for something else. But I'm just tucking the fabric in and around. I did it at the 4 north, south, east, west points, right? And then I'm kind of pleating it a little bit. I'm sorry you can't really see what I'm doing. I'm just putting a dab of hot glue in underneath the fabric after I've pleated it to just get that to hold. So this was really very simple to do. It did not take a lot of effort or a lot of time, but I thought that the effect was really nice. So I'm just doing that last final pleat, gonna tuck that in, and I'll secure that with hot glue as well. So once I had my pot all dolled up, I went ahead and I grabbed my glass beads. I have a whole stash of these things, and I was using it to weight down the planter, but also to hold my skewer. And this is so tall, you guys. I'm sorry that a lot of it is out of frame. I don't have the ability to, unless I get down on the floor, which I suppose I could have done, but I just don't have enough ceiling height to have my camera up too high or high enough, I should say, to be able to capture all of this. So you'll get to see it in a few minutes. But I went ahead and put Excelsior around the glass beads to hide them. I would have used a little bit more, but I ran out. And then I've got these faux moss little stones. Those are all Dollar Tree supplies. And the glass stones that I had in there were mostly Dollar Tree also. Now I'm just taking a red satin ribbon and I am wrapping it around the top of my planter and I'm tying a shoelace bow. It was a very simple thing. So there's my planter, and let me know what you think of this when I show you the final reveal pic here. DIY number 2. All right, I have a little foam tree form thing, a couple of socks from the Dollar Tree, and then those hearts. This is the project I thought I was going to use those for, and I ended up not using them. So the little tree form is what I'm calling this, for lack of a better term. I wanted to make sure my sock was going to fit on it, and then I've got another sock, just a plain white one, that I'm going to put around the base, so the bottom. And I'm just going to pull that down over as far as I can go with it so that it's nice and flat on the bottom. I don't want any kind of poofiness happening there because I want it to be able to rest flat on the table. So it's just going to be nice and covered. So it's got a nice fabric outside, but it'll stand up and erect. And I've got this little pouch there that we are going to stuff with some foam, not foam fill, fiber fill. There we go. So I'm just creating a little nose. If you saw the thumbnail for this video, you know that we're making a little gnome. And I'm taking some thread and I'm just wrapping it and wrapping it several times around the base of the nose, pulling it tight, and then I will tie that off. So just taking advantage of the shape of that sock. So that was basically the little heel part of the sock. So tying that off and then just kind of fluffing up the nose. So can you see it? So now I am taking out a bunch of fabric paint. This particular paint is by Arteza, but any fabric paint will do. And after the fact, I was wishing I had just used pink and white, but I ended up putting in some of the orange also, which gave me a little bit of a peachy color. For whatever reason, I had in my head that it needed to be more peachy than pink, but with the other colors that I've got going on with this, I did end up going back and putting more pink in it because I'm looking at the sock next to it. I'm like, oh, that kind of clashes. So you can see I did go back and I added some more pink. I probably, if I had to do it over again, would do it even more pink, but at any rate. Now I am taking a Dollar Tree mop head and I am going to cut off that black plastic thing. You do need something like wire cutters or tin snips. I used my tin snips. I had tried my scissors a second. I started to do that. I thought it was too bulky, and then I got my scissors, went back to the tin snips, snipped that one thing, and then I was able to get all of my strands out with no problem. I took about half of those strands and I was looking at how I might put them on my little gnome, and I decided I was going to cut these all in half. So I went ahead and just individually, because I'm a little particular sometimes, you guys, and so I just wanted them all to be the exact same length. So I did them one at a time, but you can certainly fold them in half and clip them multiples at a time. So now I'm just using the hot glue to attach strand by strand along the top edge of that white sock that we've pulled up over the form, the styrofoam form. And I'm just working my way all the way around. I started at one side of the nose and I worked my way all the way around to the other side of the nose. And then just for some added strength, I went ahead and added some additional glue around the top of it because now I'm going to unravel all of these. And I noticed that some of the strands were not fully caught up in that first initial bit of glue that I had put down. So I went ahead and added more of the glue, and then I felt like it wasn't all gonna pull out. Now I'm dividing her little hair and I am braiding her hair here. This is the first time I've done a gnome with braids, so I was really excited to give this one a shot. And I'm tying off the ends of her braids with just some really narrow ribbon. This is a part of a pack that I had picked up on clearance from Michael's a couple of years ago, I think. And snipping off those ends, I just did a regular shoelace bow, and then I did the same thing on the other side, braided it, and then went ahead and tied it off with a bow. You could certainly use a rubber band first. I just decided I didn't want to try to dig out a rubber band that would blend or not show. I think the rubber bands that I had that would have worked for that size were like blue. So I opted not to do that, but you can certainly use a rubber band first. So now I'm starting to play with her hat, and I don't know if you were able to tell, but it kind of got really skinny really fast there, and I'm like, not liking the shape of it really with her hair being there. You see how it's like fat and then it gets really skinny. So I went ahead and cut off the foot part of the sock, and I'm going to put that down first. I was planning on cutting that off anyway, so it was perfect. And now waste not, want not, right? Using that for some added fluff. So adding in the fiber fill to just fill out her little head a little bit more. And I was struggling with getting it to lay the way I wanted it, so I did pull off that little sock foot piece, and I'm gluing the fiber fill directly to the form, and then I'll put the sock back down over top of it in just a second once I have all of that the way I want it. So now her little head is going to be a better shape, and her hat will stay up and nice and fluffy. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply some glue so that that doesn't kind of slip up and off of her little head. I'm just trimming off the very edge here to make sure it's a nice even line, because I'm planning on bunching that up. So pulling this down over the other part of the sock, getting it secured down over her nose, and then I'll go ahead and glue that into place as well as soon as I have it where I want it. Although maybe I tied it off first. I guess I tied it off first. So I'm going to grab a little piece of that same ribbon that I used for her braids, and I'm just going to tie it at the top of her hat. I just thought it would be really cute. I did think about cutting slits into the very top, almost to make like a little pom-pom, but then I opted not to. I kind of liked it the way it was. And here I am going in and securing everything with the hot glue. So now I have an infinity scarf from the Dollar Tree, and it's pretty much sewn into a loop, so I had to cut it to get a flat piece of material. In hindsight, I probably could have just left it like that and used the entire thing, but I ended up using, I think it was maybe just 2/3 of it. But I'm going to tuck it under her little bod, and I'm going to figure out how long it needs to be to go around her once. And then I did about 2.5 times that length. So I went ahead and clipped off the excess and set that aside. And now I'm creating a little seam to put the scarf back together again, right? So now it's going to be a mini infinity scarf, if you will. So starting out with the same shape, or ending up with the same shape that we started out with, but just shorter. So then I folded it in on itself. Once I turned it right side out, I folded it in on itself. So it was almost like not cut, but folded in half, but inward. Hopefully you get what I mean there. And so I'm gonna pull this up around her, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to attach. This is gonna be her little dress or her little skirt. And I finally had the idea that I was going to open it back up again, and I'm gonna get a rubber band to adhere around her middle, about halfway up the fabric. So then we're gonna pull the other piece down over top of the rubber band. Hopefully the image is making it clear, because I feel like I'm having a hard time verbally explaining what I was doing, but essentially that made like a little dress for her. So, and it's no sew, right? I still have to fix my sewing machine, but that'll be for another day soon, hopefully. Taking some more of that same ribbon, and just below where the rubber band is underneath the fabric, I'm going to tie a quick little bow there. and just get her all fancied up. Fluffed up her little dress, and then I trimmed off her little hair at the ends of her braids so it's all nice and even. And that's it. I think she's so cute, but let me know what you think. DIY number 3. Okay, I missed somehow the footage where I actually painted this little Dollar Tree sign white. It already had the gold trim on it, but it's just this little sign that had a white background with black writing on it. I don't even remember what it said. It was some sort of an inspirational message, but I painted it with my white Adirondack chalk paint, and now I'm going over it with my Mod Podge. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to be taking a black marker to it, and sometimes with the chalk paint, the marker starts picking up the paint. So I wanted to protect the paint. I was making sure it was all dry, and now I'm coming in with oui, oui, oui. If you're not familiar, oui means yes in French. I saw this on Modern Glam. I believe she has a blog, and I am going to leave a link in my description box so that you can check out the decor that she had in her blog. But I just saw it online. I thought it was super cute. I am not showing you the picture just because I don't want to infringe on any sort of copyright. So I am going to just point you to her website for you to check it out. But I am just going through and writing the word "oui" all over the it's not a canvas, but you know what I mean. And I'm doing it randomly in different sizes. When I first started, I was going across in rows, and I was like, you know what, that's not random enough. So that's why I'm kind of bouncing around all over the place, just trying to get it the way that I want it without overdoing it. So there we are. And I think it's cute, but let me know what you think. Now it's time for a shout out timeout. Beautiful Valerie. I love these Valentine DIYs. And cute Carmen. These are super cute too. We've got a little bit of the Christmas and some future holidays. And so nice, Sarah. What a beautiful wreath. Thank you so much for sharing. If you would like a shout out, I would love to give you one. Please send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. Okay, I have some wood that I picked up at the Home Depot. These are 2 feet long, and I believe they're a half inch, no, 3/4 inch thick. They were $2 a piece at my Home Depot. I am marking these off at 12 inches, 10 inches, and then 8 inches, and I'm just cutting them down on my little miter saw. You can certainly use a chop saw if you have one, but I just did it by hand because I didn't feel like going out in the cold in the garage to use the big saw. So a little bit of elbow grease, and then I just sanded off the edges to make sure everything was nice and good to go. I have my crimson chalk paint. Then over on the other side, my white Adirondack, and my vintage Victorian is the pink shade. These are, I guess, the white and the pink are both Home Decor, and the crimson is Waverly. They are all Plaid products, just in case you're looking for anything similar. But I did a very rough dry brush on each of these, and then I applied some stencils that I had created with my Cricut. You can use any type of stencil. You can trace words on here. You could hand letter if you prefer. Don't think that you can't do this project if you don't have a Cricut. You absolutely can. There are so many ways to get words on here. I just happened to have the Cricut, so that is what I chose to use. But I'm using a very dry sponge method here for the stippling of the stencils for the stenciling. So I'm using makeup sponges that I've cut down into little pieces, and you can see I'll pick up paint and then I'll kind of tap it on my parchment paper, and then I stipple it down. And I did 2 coats, and I found that this worked really well to avoid bleeding. Now, if you don't want to be so careful with it, you can certainly put down Mod Podge first, but if you do that, you're probably going to want to coat the entire project with Mod Podge afterwards, because if you have any kind of bleeding with your Mod Podge, you'll be able to see that against the chalk paint. It gives a different sheen, if you will, even if you use the matte. So just be aware of that. But now once I have everything weeded, I'm going to go ahead and use my Gorilla Wood Glue to connect these. And now I'm putting the glue on the base of the shorter piece so that I don't end up adding too much glue beyond where the wood would be applied. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't putting on too much glue so that I didn't have it oozing. Now, this is a stencil I have had in my stash for years. I mean, we're talking like 20 years. So it is a plaid stencil. I only know that because it has plaid kind of pressed into it, like embossed into the corner. So I do know that it's a plaid stencil. I don't know that they still make this one. So any kind of stencil with flowers will do. It does not need to be this exact stencil. And you can tell I'm even just using one little part of the stencil. So that's my crimson chalk paint again with the rose, and now I am using moss for the green. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side just for some balance and symmetry, because I kind of like that. And once I had that all done, we were good to go. Let me know what you think. DIY number 5. Okay, so I am attempting some watercolor, but with watercolor pencils. I've had these for a while. I have just colored with them, just, adult coloring books. I just enjoy that sometimes. So I did do that with my colored pencils, but this is the first time I am attempting to use water with them. They are watercolor pencils, so they are meant to use water with them. I've just never done it before. So I've got a piece of my watercolor paper that I picked up from that pad I showed you. I think I got it at Michael's, but I've had it in my stash for a while. I just created a heart. I had tested out a couple of colors there on my parchment paper to see which one I wanted to go with. And I picked this deep red tone. So I created a heart. I purposely did not make it completely symmetrical. I wanted it to be a little bit off. And now I'm just taking a paintbrush with water and I'm going to kind of swoosh across it. I was trying to get an idea of what it was going to do. I did want it to be a little bit kind of messy and outside the lines. And I think I kind of expected that it was going to remove that harsh line, but clearly I was mistaken. But you know what? It's okay. Happy accidents, right? This is how we learn how different mediums work and what we can and can't do with them. And, I actually ended up really enjoying the effect, but I just kept coming back in with more water and getting it to where I wanted it. Now I have a Sharpie pen that I'm using, and I'm just taking my time, you guys. This is not my actual handwriting. I am just hand lettering this, but with a very simple font. Very simple. So at the top, I've got love in a script, and now I am just using a very basic, not script font. What is it called when it's not script? Oh my goodness, you have no words, but love is all you need, and I did sign my work. And now I'm pulling out my scrapbook paper and I'm picking out a piece that I can use for a background. I was so excited when I saw this, you guys, because that color matches exactly to the color. It was, again, it was kismet. It was meant to be. I did go ahead and trim this down to a 10 by 10. Afterwards, I was wishing I had just left it as a 12 by 12 because I ended up wishing I had had more border to work with. But at that point, it was too late. I was committed. So I used my Dollar Tree double-sided tape to adhere it to the background. And then I spent some time trying to figure out what length I needed to make my paint sticks. These are the 5 gallon or 3 gallon? The large paint sticks that you can get at Home Depot. So I went ahead and cut these down. The long edges are 11 inches because I know I need to get better about telling you about the measurements. So once I had that all cut down, I went ahead and glued the corners together. I made sure that everything was square with my little square there. And then I took my not my nail gun, that is a staple gun, and I used 1/4 inch staples to just secure those corners as well. I am going to be painting this, so I went ahead and used some spackle since it's not going to be seen. It dries white, it goes on pink, dries white, so you know when it's dry. And then I went ahead and I sanded that all down and made sure that it was ready for the paint. Now, I had intended to do a dry brush effect on this, and I chose the wrong tool. The paintbrush that I had picked up to do this with, it wasn't going to be the dry brush effect that I wanted. So I went ahead and just gave it a basic coat of paint, just a single coat because I knew I wanted to distress it. So I really distressed the edges. I started out with my sanding block and then I found that it was just getting a little bit dull. So I just grabbed a piece of regular sandpaper and I focused a lot on the edges of the piece. And then I also went in along the insides, not insides, but you can see where I've distressed it there. So once I was happy with it, I went ahead and got my little picture secured. I hit a little bit of glue in each of those corners and set my frame down. And then I very carefully flipped it over. It wasn't quite dry enough, but I managed, and made sure that it was nice and adhered. And then I grabbed my little staple gun again and I put staples in all the way around the edges. So I started at the center of one end and then went to the opposite side and just made sure I worked my way around that way. So now I'm going to be taking some of my craft paper and I'm going to go ahead and glue that to the back of my piece so it's nice and finished. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I like all of my pieces to be finished front and back. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the craft paper, make sure that that is nice and secure. That was wood glue that I used for that, but you could use regular school glue. It doesn't really matter. And then I'm using my X-Acto knife to trim away all of that excess paper. Now I've got this really pretty cord. It's a white and pink, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to be able to see it or if I wanted it to just be hidden behind, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna let us see that little cord a little bit. So I stapled it down and then pulled it back the other way. So you can see I'm kind of making it go the opposite way of the way that it's gonna hang. I just feel like it's gonna make it a little bit more secure by doing that. So before I trimmed that off, I went ahead and got a little piece of Scotch tape and wrapped that around the cord, and then I cut in the middle of the Scotch tape, and that just keeps it from fraying. So went ahead and stapled that, and there we go. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the project. If you did, just a reminder to give me a big thumbs up and leave me a comment. Let me know which one was your favorite. It really does help my channel to grow. All right, until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much. Take good care. Bye.